Hello there, and welcome to Sweet Child of Time. I'm your host, Steve Barnes. This week, we are not doing a recap. We're doing some Wheel of Time talk. I brought in a co-host that you do not know, but I know, and I'm going to get to know him very well. This is a guy from the Marshland Media Network. So, you know, he's got a mutual friend of mine in James. He's the host of This Movie's Gay. He's a Wheel of Time fan, and he has just finished reading all of the books. So we got to talk to him about this. So welcome from This Movie's Gay. It's Corwyn. What's up, Corwyn? Ahoy there.
Hi. Ahoy there. I'm Corwyn.
I forgot to tell you that we greet each other like sailors. Ahoy there, Corwyn.
Ahoy there, Steve. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I was so excited to read the Wheel of Time after watching the show. Yes. And I'm glad that you're familiar with the book so that I had someone to complain about fail to.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, well let's start getting into that. I want to get to know you a little bit first because nobody knows who you are, Corwyn, including myself. Now we've been talking a little bit here. What I know you as, besides a podcast host, is like an insane reader. So you've read like 200 books this past year. Is that correct?
Not this year. It was 2019 that I read 216 books or something like that. Woo. I haven't had a year like that since. I kind of stopped reading regularly once COVID hit. Okay. And then after that, I started picking back up once I had to start working again and commuting to work, but now I'm working remote, so I started reading less again. It's a vicious cycle of trying to find time and books to read. So finding the Wheel of Time was definitely great for me because I had suddenly 15 books that were rather long.
Right? Yeah, that's why I got into it as well, because I was on a reading slump and needed something to read. I was like, 15 books. Hell yeah, I like the first one, so let's go.
Well, especially because I try to read a lot of queer books or books that do have queer characters in them. So seeing the show and seeing I don't know, spoilers with Swan and Moraine, I was like, oh, let me get into these books. I don't know how much of it is true to the book, how gay it is, but I'm interested.
Yeah. Oh, God, I want to go in so many different directions now. So, but I want to stick to what I was going to ask you. How do you read your books? Are you an audiobook? Are you an analog guy, or do you do digital books?
If I can get the book in hand, I will do that. But if I can't, which is what I did with Wheel of Time, I read on my Kindle or on my phone in the Kindle app. So that's how I'm able to read so much, is because as soon as I finish one, I can go on to the next one. I don't have to wait for the library loan or anything like that. But when I was reading those 200 books, you bet I had multiple books from the library. Okay. My work was right across the street from a branch. So if I can do physical books, I will. But most of the time, it is digital. And I can't do audiobooks because I can't pay attention.
See, I was wondering, I can't do audiobooks either. And so I wanted to compare and contrast with you in that way if you did do the audiobooks, because from what I understand, the audiobooks are a completely different Wheel of Time experience because they have like a male and a female reader, and they're both very verbose. They do voices, they act things out together. I haven't experienced it, so I don't know. So I didn't know if you have experienced that or not.
Interesting. I might have to get them, and then when I'm playing games or something, put them on in the background, because I do, when I'm playing something or when I'm reading, I need something going on for me to focus on it.
Yep.
So that's the problem with audiobooks, is when I'm, just listening to them and I'm trying to focus it in the audio, I get so distracted. My mind goes off course as soon as they'll say the word dragon, and then suddenly I'm thinking about dragons for half an hour, and then I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening in this book right now?
You're writing your own book while you're listening to a book.
Literally, that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm writing my own book. As soon as they start talking about magic, I'm like, ooh, what if this is used for a magic system? That would be fun. That'd be interesting and quirky. Or a character will do something, I'm like, that was a little that was a little gay. Let me think about this character's gay entire persona. Let me start shipping them with everyone suddenly. That's where my mind goes in audiobooks.
Okay. I can't do them. Like podcasts I can do, but I can only do a podcast while I'm driving or while I'm walking or while I'm doing yard work or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm just sitting at the desk or if I'm like, I don't know, like anything else, I cannot do a podcast. I can't sit in a room and listen to a podcast and stare at the wall. It does not work that way.
Yeah, and I feel like if I drove, I might be able to do them driving,
Hmm.
but or audiobooks or podcasts, because I struggle with podcasts as well, listening. I like the little TikTok clips, especially the ones that you post. So I can like hear the bits and pieces, and those are like snippets that I can pay attention to and I can follow.
Right.
But having a whole full length podcast is hard for me. But I try to listen to them when I can because my friends do them and I love supporting people. But yeah, it's the same situation where I'm like, I might be listening to it, but don't ask me what anyone said because I don't remember because I started thinking of something else. Sorry.
Yeah, with books, I like I'm like you. I have all the Wheel of Time books, I have like some paperback, some hardback, just depending on what I picked up. I prefer reading a book, but unfortunately
Hmm.
my book habits have changed over the years. So the only time I'm reading is when I'm in bed and the lights are out. So obviously I'm
And
reading that on
it's
my phone.
so much easier on your phone. You don't have to have a little
Right.
book light. You
Yep.
you don't have to worry about falling asleep and suddenly losing your place or like
Mhm.
bending pages. Which if you in my situation accidentally falling asleep with your face on the book and then like suddenly you've got like pages and drool. You don't have to worry about that with the phone. You just it turns itself off. It's fine.
What I do have to worry about though is like when I'm reading, like right now, I'm reading The Dragon Reborn. So like I'll read a couple pages in the living room if I like have, just nothing going on. I'll read the actual book. I'll pull it out, find
Hmm.
out where I'm at, which is pretty easy. And then like when I go to my audiobook at night, that's when I'm like in my most chill state. So I'm like, what did I read earlier today? So I sometimes have a problem going back and forth between the book and the phone, but usually it's on the phone.
Yeah.
Now, I really wanted to ask you, I'm going back now because you
Okay.
mentioned Moraine and Swan, which,
Hmm.
in the show, they are gay characters.
Hmm.
So you must have picked up on the book the term pillow friends, did you?
Yes.
So
Yes.
so
The
they
pillow friends.
they do say that they were pillow friends when they were younger, like in the new spring. And this is full spoilers.
Hmm.
We're not warning anybody about that. In the new spring, of course, they were probably lovers. They had some trysts, but they, I guess, ended up heterosexual for the rest of their lives or something.
I
What's your opinion on
that
that?
I had a lot of thoughts on that. Like it's so interesting. And that's one of the things I was worried about when I was reading, because they talked about pillow friends, and then in New Spring, there was actually a moment where Swan kisses Moraine. Like it
Mhm.
she says she kisses her. So I'm like, yes, we have explicit, this is a queer moment.
Right.
And then especially with Elida,
Yes.
she also has a moment where she's talking about taking pillow friends and things
Hmm.
like that. So you're like, very queer. Um, and I was worried that when Sanderson took over, that those would just all disappear. But he actually added a gay character, which there weren't
Hmm.
any gay characters that I noticed in Robert Jordan's writing. It's like hit or miss for me because all of them seem to be very background or very like
Yeah.
no point of view for them except for Swan. But then I guess they were like, she's bi, she's gonna end up marrying Bren. You
Hmm.
know, so it would have been nice to have a more explicitly like queer character, especially in one of the characters that we see their point of view a lot.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, we don't. But I do like that at least he was able to put in like pillow friends and things like that. And I know the series is not like super old, but it is in a time where we did see less
Yeah.
queer characters in media. So it's understandable, especially if you're thinking of the author as a straight person, for him
Yeah.
to include those things is nice. I think if the Wheel of Time was written today, I think he probably would have included
Yes.
more queer characters.
Definitely would. He had his wife Harriet that was his editor. I'm not sure if I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you something you didn't already know or not, but she played a big role in bringing a lot of the women characters to life by giving him some advice. And I kind of get the gist. You know, he was a soldier in the war. I kind of get the gist. He was, very heterosexual, probably accepting of homosexuality, but just not very knowledgeable about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of the gist that I got. And I do think if he was like in later time, we probably would see more gay characters in the books. As it is, it's very male gazy in a lot of ways. There's a lot of
Yeah.
arms crossed beneath breasts. You had to have
Yeah. Tugging her braid, crossing her
yes.
arms beneath her breasts. That phrase specifically pops up so many times. She had her arms crossed beneath her breasts. I'm like, okay.
The thing that bothered me the most, yeah, with Jordan's male gazy stuff, the thing that bothered me the most, and I'm not hate talking by any means. I love this book. It's my favorite. But when the women of the Aes Sedai would have their sitter meetings and they were like forced to like disrobe and like expose their breasts to
Yeah.
each other, that's definitely a weird move that I'm glad they strayed away from in the show.
It's such a strange thing, especially because you at least have I know it's their, one of the chosen, was it Arengar? The thing is, I've read all these names, but I haven't spoken them.
Oh yeah, same.
So the person that could that channeled Sidene, however they were presenting as female.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember the name either, but I
It
believe
was
you.
like they were in the Aes Sedai camp, the rebel
Okay.
camp. It
Ah,
was Delina's secretary. It was a Halima, maybe. Let me see.
oh yes, thank you. I hear
Uh,
those keys a tapping. If
Tapping
not,
those keys.
our listeners will be hating us in the comments for not knowing this, especially me. I'm supposed to know this stuff, but
Yeah, it's Arengar.
okay, good. You were
Um,
right. Hell yeah.
yeah. So the reincarnation of Balthamel. Yeah, and their character was interesting because
Exactly. Yes.
they were channeling. Um, I said Sidene. Is that the male version? Yeah, Sidene.
Yes, that's right.
So and also that magic as well, having a male version and a female version. It's like, well, it's an interesting system.
Right,
And I think
right.
this character specifically made it even more interesting because it implies that there are possibly other channelers that aren't Forsaken, that could be channeling Sidene that are typically presenting as female, or Sidar that are typically presenting as male or born as male. I
Right.
I like to keep that in my head as like how it is. It might not be what he intended, but because he gave us one character like that, I'm clinging to it.
Right.
that
Yeah. It does seem very like very what is it? Dual binary, like only two genders exist in this universe. And there's
Yeah,
only
which
two forms of magic, and you have to fall on either camp. And it's like perfectly split. So like there's
mhm.
only one character that falls outside of that realm, and it's not even because they see themselves as a different gender. It's because it's just so happens that they were, reincarnated as a different gender against their will, basically.
Which
Isn't what?
does still implicitly make them a trans character.
Yeah, it
They have a
does.
female body, but they consider themselves to be male. So they are a trans character and they exist. They happen to be very evil and terrible.
That's right.
Um, but they exist. And the fact that they exist just to me implies that there's more of that in the world. So there are queer people in the Wheel of Time,
Mhm.
to me, in my head canon. And I think it has support in the text from that. So knowing that, it's very weird that the sitters are like, let me bare my breasts. It's like, what if one of them doesn't have breasts? Like, what if one of them just does not?
Sure,
That
sure.
happens.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, statistically, one of them does not. I'm sure of it.
yeah, like it's crazy when you like really dive into it like that. But yeah, there's some weird things that I'm glad that the show seems to be changing and doing differently.
Hey, Steve from Sweet Shot of Time here to tell you about our latest sponsor, which is Zencastr. It's how we do our podcasts now. Zencastr is great for connecting with others because I can connect with other people. I got them all on screen with me. I can record them super easy. And the best thing about Zencastr is to me, the best thing is it records locally. So if I'm recording with someone and their Wi-Fi connection is weak or they're cutting in and out or something, it will still record everything they said perfectly. I might not be able to hear it while we're recording, but in the edit, all of it's there. I love it so much for that reason. I always get a good, strong connection with Zencastr. It makes it really easy to edit the podcasts afterwards. And I guess the main thing about Zencastr is, for me, it's free because I'm sponsored by them. But for you, you can start off getting 30% off if you use my promo code, which is Sweet Child of Time, and you can start out with that 30% off coupon. Now, there's some stuff that I have to tell you, and I'm going to tell you right now. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code Sweet Child of Time, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. If you want to have the same easy experience I do for all my podcasting and content needs, it's time to share your story. Woo! Sweet Child of Time is sponsored by Promoco RVA. Recreational use of marijuana is now legal in Virginia. But where do you get it? Google up Promoco RVA, that's spelled Promoco RVA, and schedule services with these guys. Sweet Child of Time can vouch for their professionalism and their products. They have wide varieties of vapes, flower, edibles, everything you can think of, and they're open from Monday to Saturday from 11 to 7. You can schedule your own appointment at your convenience, get verified online, and it's that simple. Promoco RVA for your Richmond, Virginia needs. Or if you're in DC, you can visit their storefront at 1813 18th Street Northwest. Or just check out the link in this description notes. Hey, Promoco, thanks. One of the main themes of the book is very heteronormative, which is there's a female version of magic, a male version of magic, and the way they work best is if they work together, and they're designed to work together. There's always like a female and a male version of everything, and that's pretty much the only way to like defeat the Dark One is to join those two forces together, which is very like, I don't know, of its time, I suppose. But that is like a huge theme of the book. But I think that goes to show that like no two people ever read the same book ever.
Yeah.
Because you're bringing
Very
your own
true.
experience and perspective into it. But I don't know. I think it's interesting that you were talking about that and that we're going on that discussion here when I was just listening to Wheel of Time Spoilers, which is another podcast I'm a big fan of, and I geek out on them all the time. But yeah, that's something that one of their episodes, they towards the ending had a big discussion about, you know, how male and female have to work together, and how that's one of the main themes of the book, which I don't know, is interesting. I wanted to know, like, you know, if you could change any of that, if you had to say, if you were like one of Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson's editors, do you think there's a way that they could switch that around a little bit, make it more inclusive?
I think if they did add more, if they wanted to keep that track, keep the side E and side R working together, They could have introduced more characters that are born male or born female that are channeling the opposite of what they think.
Yeah,
There could have
that's
been
what I
more of
think too.
that to make it more inclusive.
Hmm.
But overall, it's definitely, that is one of the major themes of the book, but also a major conflict in the book. There's
Hmm.
always this, he says it so much that I'm like, have you ever, he's like, the men don't understand the women and the women don't understand the men. I'm like,
All the time.
have you ever had a conversation with a woman? Have you ever had a conversation with another man? Like, you can go one of two ways here. Like, no one can understand each other because people are wild and crazy, or you should be able to understand the women in your life. That doesn't, it's so like, so yes or no. It's so
Yeah.
black or white with that. There's no mixing, there's no any of that with with the women and men in this series, which is very strange and interesting to me when you consider the Atha and Mir, the sea ship people,
Hmm.
or the uh or the Shanchen or anything like that. Any of these people that have like different views on
Right.
sex and things like that. The Aiel as well.
Yeah.
The Tuatha, like all of them, the traveling people, they all, like, you have the main characters of the book from the Two Rivers. They're very very, very stubborn, but also very like conservative.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Um, Whereas all these other people are like, no, our breasts are like, they're out. They're out. We're
Right.
on the sea. Like, why are you looking at my breasts? We're doing ship work. Come on, get it together. But you have like Rand and Perrin and Matt like blushing and being like, oh my God, what's
Hmm.
happening? So you have this acceptance of like the body and
Right.
sex from these other cultures, but they also have that, I don't understand men and I don't understand women, and it's just such an interesting like little tidbit in the series, that is how it is.
So it's all about poor communication, it seems. Like,
100%. No one can talk to each other. No one knows how to talk to each other at all.
so it's like among the three main guys, well, I see the three main guys, Rand, Matt, and Perrin, they all think
Mhm.
that the other two are more smooth and can talk to women better.
Yes, every single
And then,
time
like,
they bring up women, they're like, uh, Perrin and Rand are so much better with women than I am, or Matt and Rand are so much better. It's so funny.
they're all great in their own way and they don't even realize it. But if they like communicate with each other, they could really be like a well rounded person because they all have these distinct qualities that could help each other. The women do
All five of the originals, and well, we'll say six, including Elaine. All six
exactly.
of them, just could really have solved the issue with the Dark One in a day if all of them had
Hmm.
just worked together and talked. Like, if all of them were just like, let's all be on the same page, let's all have each other's backs. No, we're gonna be stubborn and weird and secretive the entire time.
Yeah, the ladies did that too. Like
Yeah.
Nynaeve, like Egwene and Elaine did a lot of the same stuff, the same comparing each other and thinking each other were better than the other. And well, except for Nynaeve, she knew that she was better than everybody else.
Nynaeve's like, I'm strong, but I can't channel. I'm blocked. That was the longest block in my life.
Yeah, for real. So
Oh
you
my
said you watched
God.
the TV show first. Is that
I
correct?
did. I did watch the TV show first.
What interested you into getting into it in the first place?
The TV show,
Hmm.
um, I just saw that it was this new fantasy series on Amazon. I had just watched, it came out around the same time as Lord of the Rings, or was that season?
Yes, the
Yeah.
yep, more or less, sure.
Yeah. So it was
2021.
it was around the time I was watching things and I was like, oh yeah, let me get into this. Especially because it had Rosamund Pike in it, and I
Yes.
enjoy her. Because she also did I Really Care a Lot, which is another gay film. Uh, so I was like, let me see what she's doing. Um, and yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. I didn't get into it enough to want to read the books from season 1, but season 2, by the end of that, especially with Egwene being a badass, I was like,
Hmm.
let me read these books. Let me see what's happening.
And there's so much that is yet to come that seems like it's going to be very epic, and we've only scratched the surface so far. So
Yeah.
I really hope they can keep it going, and I'm glad it's improved from season one. I'm there was a lot of flack about season one, especially from the book readers, and I don't know if you've gotten into the book community at all. Um,
Nope.
but yeah, it's a tough community to be part of. I'm going to be honest. I've only found my community within a certain group, a certain subset of the Wheel of Time community called the Wheel of Time. What is it called? Yeah, Wheel of Time TV series. And
Hmm.
it's a group of people that have read the books and watched the TV series on Facebook. And they seem to have more or less the same vibe as me, which is
Hmm.
like, I like this. This is great. I'm not going to kill anybody for their opinion about it. I'm not going to belittle anyone who doesn't know as much as I do, because that was a big problem with me when I first got into these books. I would go to the message boards, Tor.com, and what
Hmm.
is the other one called? The White Tower, I think. Tarvalon. That's what it was. And I would
Hmm.
try to get into conversations and ask questions and just find myself being belittled or like insulted or ignored, or just like, hey, I'm just trying to talk about a book. I don't understand why there's these weird vibes coming out.
Yeah.
And it just seems I'm not going to talk trash about the community, except that I am. I'm going to talk trash about the community. It just seems like a very unaccepting lot. And especially when it came to the TV show, they were negative about it from the get go.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't love the TV show when it came out, but I was happy that it was represented on screen, and I didn't think it was terrible. I didn't love it. I never like professed that I loved anything about season 1, but I did like it, and I liked the characters, and James liked it. You
Hmm.
liked it enough to continue on. So that kind of, I like hearing this because it like screams in the face of like my opposition of the other people that are like, the book is pure, this TV show is garbage, and I don't know. It's a
I
hard community to
mean,
be part of.
I find that a lot of like online communities around fantasy novels and or even other TV shows, or it could be any genre. It's not just limited to fantasy, but a lot of
Mhm.
like big online fandom spheres like that can run very easily into the toxicity. You see that a lot with, especially the circle that I follow. You see with like the D&D groups. Some of them are a little more toxic than others for fandom wise. Um, so I feel like that's just a thing that happens when you put a bunch of nerds in the room together, which is unfortunate because we should all just love this media. But it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah.
And, it could be the traumas. It could be the traumas that are leading people to do that. And if it is trauma leading you to belittle someone that loves the same media you do, then I
Mm,
hope you get help.
no
Hope
joke.
you get some therapy there.
I do like our the that TV show group I was telling you about though. I have found a lot of comfort there, and that's pretty much where I post all my stuff. And I do delve into the Reddit groups occasionally when I want to get to some discussion, but I try not to voice my opinion too much because I do not like getting shot down, and I take things very personal. So
That's fair.
I
That's fair.
don't like it.
And that's probably why I don't venture into these groups either. I've read so many books that do have fandoms, and I could probably very easily go into those fandoms and like find community.
Hmm.
But I'm also afraid of just like being shot down or being like belittled and
Yeah.
things like that. So I don't. I just sit with my thoughts in my own little head cannons, and occasionally talk about them with someone else.
You mentioned that you like to stick to books that have like a queer theme, but like what is
Mhm.
like your favorite like genre of book?
I really love uh high fantasy, anything with
Okay.
dragons, or urban fantasy. So really fantasy all around is my go-to. Every once in a while I'll sit there and read a little sappy drama, a little sappy romance, gay romance book. But for the most part I stick with fantasy.
Okay. Can you cuz for me I'm like when it comes to music, I like to really delve in and get into some really
Hmm.
underground stuff. But that's just music. With books, you're like dedicating for me, like it took me 2 years to get through the whole series.
Oh
Remind our
wow.
listeners, how long did it take you to get through the Wheel of Time series, Corwyn?
Okay, so according to my Kindle stats, I bought the first set of 5 books on September 23rd. I didn't start reading every day until October 7th, and I
Okay.
finished them on December 8th. So let's see, how many days? It's like 60 days or something like that.
And that's for
28
all 15 of
days.
the books?
That's for all 15 of the books.
I
Um,
I'll let him look up his stats before I start expressing my disbelief in
Yeah, 62 days from October 7th to December 8th. That's about how long it took me to read all 15 books. Granted, I had to travel during that time. So there were some days where I read for like 15 minutes. But then there are some days where I read for like 6 hours. So it all evens out probably to about 3 or 4 hours a day. Um,
It seems
and
like you
in
retained a
those,
lot. I mean, just talking to you just now, I mean, you've retained a lot of the information because I was afraid you would not have read them that fast, that much information. And
mhm.
there's 4,000 characters. There's 4,000 named characters. So I don't,
So many.
there's,
I can't tell you the amount of times I had to jump to the wiki real quick to see like to be like, wait, which one was this? Which character, which Aes Sedai is this? Okay, it's that one. Okay, great. I'm good. So I did have to do that a few times while I was reading. And I did use his glossary at the end of the books a few times as
oh, heck
well,
yeah.
to refer back to like what character they were randomly mentioning, especially when they were like getting into the great generals and things like that. I was like, wait, which one is this?
I mean, I'm just shocked that that you went through it that quickly. It might be a world record. I don't know. It could be. I have to, I have to ask because I mean, yes, 62 days is about how long it takes me to get through like one book, one
Hmm.
Wheel of Time book, I should say. Um, that's amazing. So you read a lot and you retain a lot of information. So I need to get, like I was saying before, I don't really scratch I don't really get into a lot of underground books and don't really go beyond what is on the main shelf. So
Hmm.
like I'm a, Stephen King, Patrick Rothfuss,
Hmm.
um,
Oh,
Robert Jordan,
oh
George R.
yes.
R. Martin. So all the main big guys that are already
Uh-huh.
rich. So could you recommend for me and our listeners something that's like along the lines of like Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, Patrick Rothfuss we might not have heard of?
Actually, I do have one. It is called the Lock or no, the Nightblade, by Garrett Robinson. It is a queer fantasy book. Um, the Nightblade is the first one that he wrote. It's actually the Underrealm is like the name of the world, and there's like a bunch of books in the world
Okay.
so far. There's like he's got 3 trilogies or something like that out, or the one that started with Nightblade might be 7 books. But he's got quite a few books out, and then he's got some books that um, I think he's got a Discord, and fans of the books have also like written some. So he's got this like series of tales from Underrealm that are written by other people for that world. So it's a
Neat.
really
Okay.
cool.
Fan
Um,
fiction.
yeah. Well, fan fiction, but also canon because he published it.
Oh,
He published
damn.
it as a
Okay.
book. So there's like it's an interesting world. It's high fantasy. Uh, it has elves, but they're not quite elves. They're very alien. And then it
Cool. Okay.
has a very interesting magic system that revolves around like 4 different types of magic users. It's been several years since I have read it, so I need to refer back to the books before I could like delve into them.
Hmm.
But one thing is like there's like alchemists or something like that they can touch things and transform them. There are some magic users that use telekinesis and their eyes glow, but they have to be able to see the thing they're lifting. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, there's also people that can transform their bodies. Um, but very limited. It's like a really interesting magic system, and he delves into it really well. I need to refresh myself on it in the future, but definitely highly recommend it. The Underrealm by Garrett Robinson.
Heck yeah.
And they
Okay.
also he has talked about wanting to include queer characters and queer people in his books, so they're very heavily like included. Um, the There's even a whole trilogy written from the point of view of a trans man. So it's really interesting and really awesome. And because of the magic system, they're able to like actually like uh, perform magic surgery
Hmm.
to make people more comfortable in their own bodies, and
Oh,
it's great.
neat.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful series. So that's the closest I think to one of these big fantasy epics.
Okay.
The other one I like is the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Murr. That one is more space opera, necromancers. It's very interesting. It's very difficult to uh, like understand everything that's going on, I'd say.
Okay.
It's very written very, very well. Written like one of those fantasy novels like Game of Thrones or something like that, where you're like, there's so many big words here. There's so many big ideas here where I'm like, I'm not smart enough for this sometimes. Uh, but like once you, because it starts off sort of as a mystery, and once it like the author does really well with just giving you like tidbits of information, tidbits of what's going on. So like once you pull those together and once you get through the books, you're like, oh, I understand what's happening. But it takes a minute to get there. And
Okay.
I just really enjoy them for that.
That's how
And
Wheel of
then
Time is for me, though. Like
mhm.
sometimes I have a hard time, comprehending what's happening, especially when he starts getting into like describing action, describing fights,
Oh,
describing battles. I'm not really fully into that.
I honestly, I think that Sanderson did a better job with describing
I agree.
action and battles than Robert Jordan did. I do like how Robert Jordan did it. Um, I don't think it's easy to follow because a lot of it is seeing like flashes of
Yes.
movement, flashes of things happening. So you're like, what the hell is going on? And I think that's what he meant to do because he wants the reader's imagination to. I'm putting words in his mouth, but I think he wants to use the reader's imagination to decipher what's happening there. But
Sure.
Brandon Sanderson gave a little bit more of a guided tour to the action than Robert Jordan does.
Yeah, I agree. I like when I'm thinking of like four, or I guess three types of authors right now. One would be, like I said, Patrick Rothfuss, and I would put like Chuck
Wonderful.
Palahniuk in this
Oh yeah.
category,
Hmm.
where like it's really easy to read. It's like it's almost like having a conversation with someone. The comprehension level is very high. It's just easy to pick up on, and even if there's a lot of weird stuff going on, it's kind of explained to you.
Yeah.
Then you have like Game of Thrones, which I'm a big fan of, and I love the thing that they did in Game of Thrones a lot, where they would have a lot of background action happening that would get kind of
Yeah.
described, and then as you get further into the book, you realize that background action actually had a a bigger role than you realize, or maybe that was like
Mhm.
a main character that was in disguise at some point. Wheel of Time kind of does that as well, which I like because there'll be a lot of mention. And if you do a reread, which I highly recommend a reread, it's very fun because, like, for example, your first time through, you did not know that Celine was Lanfear. And you did not know that the old lady that was at the what is it, the Stone of Tear was also Lanfear. And like Elsie, like that's the book I'm reading, obviously, The Dragon
Mhm.
Reborn. But like the girl Elsie, you know, like they talk about her in the first book, and then the third book, she has a different, you know, a different kind of vibe about her. And the reason is she's actually Lanfear in disguise again. So it's like you pick up on these things like your second time through, but the first time through, it's just kind of like, okay. You know, it's not a huge revelation, whereas the second time through is a lot of aha moments going on, I
See,
guess.
and that's where having watched the show first, I was spoiled with knowing that that was Lanfear. Because
Oh, right.
when
Okay.
she showed up, I was when she showed up in they weren't in the world of dreams. They were in one of the parallel worlds.
Yeah, they were like when they did the flicker thing through the portal stone. It was a portal
The
stone.
portal stone, which those disappeared until the last book. They were like
Right.
gone and then suddenly there, and I'm like, okay, we're using portal stones again. Got
Mhm.
it. That was another thing that there's so many things added about the power in the books that they just never refer to again, or they'll like
Mhm.
it's referred to in the very first second book or whatever, and then it'll come back in the last book. That to me was very strange. But I also understand because you give so much power to these characters. You're like, I gotta give them a little more conflict, so I gotta just kind of conveniently forget this exists.
Of course.
Um, but yeah, I got spoiled with the show with knowing that was Lanfear. When she showed up, I was like, this is around the time in the this is around the time in the show that he met that innkeeper. I'm pretty sure this is Lanfear. Especially when they were like, she's so beautiful and all that. I was like, that's Lanfear.
Well, of course, the show spoiled some stuff for you. That goes without saying. Was there anything spoiled for you in the books, like before you started reading, that you kind of wish hadn't been spoiled, or like any big surprises that stuck out to you?
um, I didn't. I did go in thinking that Perrin would have a wife in the beginning, and he did not. Um, so then when I was reading, I wanted to find that character and where the hell they pulled her from for the show. Because I had when I watched the show, the very first viewing, very first episode, watching it, Trollocs attacking them in the blacksmith, Perrin beating the hell out of that Trolloc with the axe,
Right.
and then turning and killing her. My first thought, seeing that scene first time, not being a Wheel of Time fan yet, not knowing anything about the world or anything about the books or anything like that, I was like, why was she trying to kill him?
You know, that's interesting because I did not get that vibe. Like I said, none of us watched the same show.
Yeah,
James and I agreed because we rewatched it and we didn't catch that. I didn't get that vibe that she was about to kill him. I saw it
immediately.
completely differently.
Well, because you see, if you watch it,
Yeah.
Perrin is beating the hell out of that Trolloc.
Yeah.
He's raging, and then he hears something behind him. He turns, just swinging, because the only thing that's going to be behind him, aggressively, is going to be a Trolloc, but it ends up being his wife. Um, and the way he hit her in the side. If she was just coming up to Perrin to be like, "We did it," why was her hammer up in the air holding it with both hands like she was about to swing it down on his head?
I, I was under the impression that she was fighting another Trolloc off to
There
the
weren't any other
side.
Trollocs. They were all dead.
Do I need to watch it for a third or
You
fourth
gotta
time
watch
now?
it for the
Okay.
third or fourth time. You gotta watch it. Watch that scene because she straight up looks like she's about to murder him. And I have been waiting to have a conversation with someone that read the books and watched the show to talk about that, because like she was going to kill him. That is me as a watcher, not knowing anything about the show. That was my take. I was like, his rude ass wife was because we only see before her him being like, I love you, and her being like, I know. And just she comes off as so uncharismatic, so unlikable.
Didn't want to be at the party. She wanted to be working instead.
Yeah, and so when I watched it, I was like, oh, she just took her opportunity to try to kill him. She was like, oh, the Trolloc did it. That was my thought, was that she was like, oh, we got attacked. This is a great time to kill my husband so that I don't have to be married to him anymore. Well, not even thinking about like dark friends or anything like that. So yeah, that's my take. Because why else would she be standing close enough to hit him and close enough for him to hit her, with facing him and with both hands up, holding the hammer above her head, about to swing down?
At this point, having not rewatched it yet, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't agree with you, but I am going to give you some more fuel if you would like. I'm going to give you some more fuel.
Okay.
She mentions, it's Padden Fane, the actor who plays him, mentions how Laila and he were like buddies, and she was always really happy to see Padden Fane. And of course, we know Padden Fane is like one of the worst guys. Right.
Yeah, Padden Fane is awful.
There's one more feather in your cap, and here there's another one as well, which is the fact that Ishmael can get to his dark friend buddies through dreams. He doesn't need to actually go visit anybody. He can just go in their dreams.
Yep.
Which is the reason that we have Tuathan and Aiel and other dark friends that normally would not have access to Ishmael. So it's very possible that he came to Laila in her dreams. It's very possible the only reason that she married Perrin was he was Ta'veren and was tied in with these guys, and she was kind of instructed to do so. So those are like, I think those are like three. I got
another feather for you.
Okay, go for it. No, a feather for you or for me?
For you.
Okay.
The nightmares that Perrin is having of her being dead. We've established in the books, at least, and we established later in the show, that wolves are not shadow spawn. They're not evil. They're good.
Right.
The nightmares he's having, the wolves are eating her. The wolves are trying to get rid of her.
Well, so that's a feather in your cap then, because that's more proof that she's a dark friend. I don't have any feathers over here.
Well, then another feather for me. That she's a dark friend because the wolves did not like her.
Now, it is interesting that, like you said, there is no Laila in the books. They had 45.
There is one. She does show up in the Two Rivers. She is a Two Rivers resident. Her name is mentioned briefly once when Perrin goes back to save the Two Rivers from the Trollocs.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because I was like, why did they invent another character when they had like 4,500 to choose from?
Yeah, her name's there. She exists in the Two Rivers. She they randomly mention her, or she like says something random during that whole bit with Perrin and the Two Rivers.
That's all I need. It makes me happy.
But there's no indication in the books of her being a dark friend or anything like that.
Right. So maybe she was a dark friend. I don't know.
I fully think that she was in the show. In the show, she was straight up a dark friend. She was straight up going to murder Perrin. If she wasn't a dark friend, then she was just a very unhappy wife that was going to murder her husband. One of the two.
Now, I'll tell you what I was spoiled by in the books, and it was an accident because, I started reading the books first. I started reading them actually waiting between seasons of Game of Thrones, and I was done with Game of Thrones books. So I started picking up Wheel of Time. That's how I got into it. It's just I wanted to read more fantasy at the time. So I was reading the books, and I was like, going to tarvalon.com or tarvalon.org, whichever it is, to get some answers. And I was spoiled to the fact that Egwene was going to become the the
The
Armorillan
Amerlin.
seat of the Rebel Tower.
Mm-hmm.
I was spoiled that Matt was gonna lose his eye, and I was spoiled about Perrin becoming a dark friend, or becoming not a dark friend, a wolf brother. Take that back. He's not a dark friend. He's a great
He's
guy.
not a dark friend.
Just his wife is,
Just his dead
apparently.
wife. Just his dead wife. But also, like, Fail comes pretty close too. Come on. She's terrible.
Right. So let's get it. Why did not they not use? I guess we're going to meet Fail later on.
Yeah, we've got to.
Talk about toxic relationships. Like this couple
So
had
bad.
the most toxic relationship I've ever read in a book, and I've admitted this before many times on this podcast with James. My favorite book characters, it's like a tie between Nynaeve and Perrin. Those are my
Mm-hmm.
two favorite. I can't decide which one of them I like the most. So it's really upsetting to see Perrin in this relationship with Fail, who like I find very hot, like the way she's described. It's like she's like my type, but she's not nice at all. I would not want to be
Not
anywhere
nice.
near her whatsoever. um, I don't know if you had any thoughts about their relationship, or if maybe Bear Lawn would have been a better choice for the guy, even though she was dark too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other interesting thing is the way Jordan and Sanderson used her, Bear Lane, because she seems like so like the Aiel love her, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, why? And like everyone loves her for some reason, and then suddenly like she's got this side where she's like, I'm gonna steal Perrin from you to
Mm-hmm.
Fail, because Fail was being an asshole. So I don't know if he should have ended up with either of them really, because they were both kind of bad. Um, but as far as like attitude, I guess I would have liked Berlane with Perrin instead of Fail,
I definitely would
until
have.
Fail got captured and had to do her stint with the Savannah and the
Mm-hmm.
terrible
The Aiel, the what do you call them?
the Shido.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the word I was trying to think of.
Gotcha.
The Shido, yeah. After her stint with them, she was a lot better, and I was like, okay, I can stand reading this again.
It's like
Because
she got a job. She got a job like in public service, and she had to learn how to deal with the public. And she finally like got
yeah,
nice.
she's like, oh, I understand other people exist. I understand other people have thoughts and feelings that aren't mine. The thing I don't understand with her is that they're like, oh, the Saldeans are so fiery and they want to argue and all this stuff, and she is smart enough to like know as much as she knows about the world and her training with falconry and like
Hmm.
uh her combat training and being a hero of the horn
Oh
and like
yeah.
all this stuff, and she's grown up around royalty, so she has like a big education and all of that, but she apparently has not had any sort of education in how to treat people or
Right.
how other people think, because
Oh, her parents are awful too.
yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, Bashir was great. Bashir was great. He was awesome. The only moment I didn't like Bashir was when he was being manipulated in like the last book.
Oh well, yeah. I guess you're right. I guess I should put more thought on the on her mom than anything.
Yeah.
But she got a lot of bad training, I believe.
It's just like, okay, you expect your husband to stand up to you and do all this stuff. He's not going to do that if you don't communicate with him.
That's
He
right.
grew up in the little town that thought that, a place twice as big as it was a grand city, not knowing that
Hmm.
the rest of the world exists. He
Hmm.
came from a little corner of the world, and she knows that, and she's been in that little corner, and she's still like, no, you've gotta you've gotta fight with me or I'm gonna be disappointed. It's so frustrating how much she just does not communicate with him, and
Yeah.
he tries. He's like, I'm trying to be kind, I'm trying to be soft, and she's like, no, that's not what I want, but doesn't say that's not what she wants, just gets pissed at him. It's dumb.
I mean,
It's
the introduction to her, I think, is not terrible, because you're introduced to her as like this royalty, but she actually wants to go, be a hero of the Horn and have adventure and
Yeah.
stuff. And like, so my initial impression of her was like very high. So I think that's why I felt like a little betrayed by her towards the end, because
Yeah.
I liked her so much at the beginning.
Especially with her, like, because when she showed up, that's when Perrin saved Gaul from the White Cloaks and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
She just witnessed this and was like, you know what, you're interested, I'm gonna follow you. I'm like, cool, another cool companion that Moraine's not gonna like. But otherwise, great moment. And then you start getting her personality, and I'm like, oh, please throw her off a cliff. I do not want to read about her anymore. I do not want to read about Perrin being upset anymore because she's being an asshole.
You just brought up something that made me remember that there are more queer characters than we remember in the Aiel culture.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember their name, but you mentioned Gaul,
The
and
Yeah,
Gaul got
Chiad
mixed
and
up.
Bane.
There you go. They were in the
Mhm.
show. He got mixed up with them, and they were definitely like a lesbian couple, correct? Like they were.
Yeah, they were first sisters, so it was never explicit whether they were, but it seemed like they were. They
Yeah.
were in a sense that, like, they, we can infer that they were that they were made first sisters through the ritual that the wise ones did with
Hmm.
Avienda and Elaine. Um, so there might have been a relationship with that. We don't know much.
We don't, but
It's We
they
don't know
hooked up
much
with
about the
Gaul too.
Aiel.
They were
Yeah.
like they were like a, I guess, a threesome couple. Like, so that's definitely like
Yeah.
out of the ordinary.
It was one of those moments where Gaul is like, "This is my girlfriend and her girlfriend," or "This is my wife and her girlfriend." Like, it was. It's one of those moments of a throuple, but it's one person that loves two people, and the two people are like, "I'll just tolerate you."
Well, man, I guess we should start winding down. But I never asked you who your favorite characters are of both the book and the TV show.
I also love Nynaeve when she's not being stubborn. Um, I love Matt when he's not being stubborn
He's
and
hard
weird
not to
about
love.
the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Moraine is great. Suan is great. I
Oh,
I
okay.
love Suan. The whole time, every single
Surprise.
time
Okay.
she starts cursing, starts talking about fishing terms. I'm like, hell yeah, hell yeah, leader of the Aes Sedai doing this, having this moment. She's great. Um, yeah, I
What?
think those are my favorites.
I mean, yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, I can't argue with your opinion, of course, but I mean, it's interesting. I don't really hear a lot of people saying that Swan and Moraine are their favorites. Usually, it's always Matt. He's a big
Hmm.
one. Nynaeve, Egwene, Perrin. Those are usually the four that get mentioned the most. Or Min.
Yeah,
Min's a really interesting character that,
Min is interesting.
and I
Um,
hope she gets played up more in the show because it seems like she's very background. I mean, she's there, but I want to see more Min. She's probably like in my top 10 of all the characters of the book.
Yeah, I think because we haven't really gotten to the part of the show yet where she is prevalent in the books either.
Right.
Because like she just shows up in the beginning and is like, "Yeah, I see things," and then she sort of kind of disappears until the issues at the tower um, with Suan. I think I love her because she seems to be the most. She has such an interesting journey throughout the cycle of the books, and complete spoilers, her death devastated me.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it coming, but I was like, oh, please, please, but they killed her anyway.
She was a very like grounded character that seemed to like just have, I don't know, an above average like emotional intelligence and just
Mm-hmm.
a good perception of other people. And she never acted like out of pocket or anything. Like she was, I don't know. I just got the vibe that she'd be a great person to be a friend with. A very stable, good
Yeah.
person that'll give you good advice.
Yeah, Swan and I would be BFFs. We would have a great time together.
Uh-oh. I was talking about men, not Swan.
Oh, men.
I have a different opinion of Swan. She does crack me up with her fish stuff. I do respect that she's a more grounded person, and she is. That's the kind of Armorillan. That's how I say it. It's wrong. That's the kind of
That's okay.
Armorillan seat that I like. Is like somebody that has seen all aspects of the world, that has been through hard times, good times, and everything in between. Instead of just somebody like I hate to say it, like say if Elaine hadn't met our crew and she had
Yeah.
become an Aes Sedai and then she had become the Armorillan seat, she'd be like a queenly Armorillan who probably wouldn't be in touch with the small folk as much as she should be.
Yeah.
Whereas Swan is.
There's definitely a lot of, especially Elaine trying to learn curses and trying to learn cuss words and rude things to say. You're like, she's definitely out of touch. Same with her brother Gwen. Same with
Galad.
Yeah, Galad. Like they're kind of out of touch. So I feel like Swan adds a nice dynamic to the Aes Sedai because she's not so face calm statue,
right?
Which there's so much we can go into for the Aes Sedai.
I have like a whole list of questions here I was going to ask you, and I haven't asked you hardly any of them. So it's very good news, Corwyn.
I have a lot of thoughts and feelings.
And I want to know them all, and we're going to. But yeah, I guess we're going to wrap it up here, Corwyn. How are we going to wrap this up? Usually, when me or Lindsay or James or Nate will end the podcast, we'll talk about who our least favorite and most favorite characters are. We just talked about who our most favorite characters were. So let's talk about who you absolutely don't like. We'll leave a little bit of trash talk and then we'll do some plugs. So Fail. We already did talk about Fail. We gave her lots of trash talk. We talked about Laila. Are there any other characters that you just do not like?
I'm just going to kick Fail while she's down again.
Okay.
Just kick her while she's down. And Savannah. Fuck Savannah.
Savannah is absolutely the worst. And I'm going to, speaking of Savannah, like her boy Coulon. What was his name? Coulion?
Oh, yeah.
He was the biggest jerkhead I've ever seen.
Yeah. And that, yeah. He was a dick. And just so wrong about everything. And knowing knowing he was not the Karakarn, took all of his people and was like, nah, I am the Karakarn. It's like, you are Delulu. You do not. You got some man to put dragons on your arms and decide that you're the chosen one.
That's right.
The chief of chiefs, and you are not.
He's a poser, dude. He's a total poser.
You're a poser. And I'm so glad that Matt murdered him. I'm so glad that Matt took him out on the field.
I usually don't condone murder, but I have to agree. Like that was a satisfying one. It was.
I love that Matt just ends up in situations and you're like, oh, Matt.
Yeah, I'm on the Dragon Reborn. So like the Eye of the World, Matt is okay. But like the second book, there's not a whole lot of Matt, and you only see like mad, crazy Matt. So you really don't start loving him until like the point that I'm at right now, which where I'm at in the book right now is when Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine send Matt off to go send a message to Elaine's mother after Matt got healed. So I'm starting to get into the good stuff right now. I was going to get you on the show like in January or February, and we were going to compare notes where we were in the books, but then you finished the books in 62 days. Plans did not work out, so now we're just going to be talking.
I finished them so fast, and now I have other things that I need to read.
Yep. Well, let's get on to some plugs. Do you have any plugs you want to get into this week, or anything you want to recommend besides what you have recommended?
I mean, I am on a few episodes of Mostly Speakin' Sentai, and I do have this movie's gay, which you've mentioned. It is on hiatus, but it will come back eventually. So yeah, go listen to those. Go listen to those things. And then I do occasionally stream on Twitch under twitch.com/Corwynning. It's Corwyn with a Y and then ing at the end. Those are my plugs. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. I'm definitely going to have you again because I have more questions to ask you, and we can go into much more if you wish.
Of course.
But for right now, I want to thank you very much for coming on to the show. And let me get into my outro here. I hope that you, Corwyn, and that all of our listeners always find water and shade and shoes. Bye.
Bye.